The hidden causes of World War I. World War I, 1914 to 1918, is often described as the result of a single event, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary in June 1914. While this incident acted as the immediate trigger, it was not the true cause of the war. The real reasons lay much deeper. Beneath the surface were long-standing political tensions, economic rivalries, secret agreements, and nationalist movements that had been building for decades. These hidden causes turned Europe into a powder keg, ready to explode at the slightest spark. 1. Nationalism, a divided Europe. One of the most powerful hidden causes of World War I was a nationalism, the belief that people of the same culture, language, or ethnicity should form their own nation. Aggressive nationalism countries like Germany and France promoted extreme patriotism. Citizens were taught to believe in their nation's superiority, leading to hostility toward others. Ethnic nationalism in the Balkans. The Balkans were home to many ethnic groups under foreign rule, especially the Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires. Slavic groups, supported by Serbia and Russia, wanted independence. This created constant unrest and violence in the region. Nationalism encouraged competition, hatred, and revenge, especially between rival nations, making peaceful cooperation nearly impossible. 2. Imperialism, competition for power and resources. Imperialism, the struggle to build and expand empires, was another hidden cause. European powers competed fiercely for colonies in Africa and Asia. Colonies provided raw materials, markets, and military advantages. Germany, a newly unified nation, felt it was unfairly left behind compared to Britain and France. This rivalry increased suspicion and resentment. Instead of cooperation, nations prepared for conflict to protect or expand their empires. 3. Militarism, the glorification of war. Militarism refers to the belief that military strength is the best way to protect a nation's interests. European nations built massive armies and navies. Germany and Britain engaged in a naval arms race, competing to build the strongest fleet. Military leaders gained strong influence over government decisions. As military plans were prepared in advance, leaders believed that war was inevitable and even desirable. Once tensions rose, these plans were quickly put into action, leaving little room for diplomacy. 4. Alliance system, a chain reaction. Another hidden cause was the complex system of alliances formed for security. Major alliances, Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Italy, Triple Entente, Britain, France, Russia. These alliances were meant to prevent war, but they had the opposite effect. If one country went to war, its allies were obligated to join. A small regional conflict could quickly grow into a global war. This system turned the assassination of one man into a war involving dozens of nations. 5. Economic rivalries and industrial competition. Economic competition also played a major role. Industrialized nations competed for markets, resources, and trade dominance. Germany's rapid industrial growth threatened Britain's economic leadership. Trade conflicts increased distrust between nations. Economic fear often translated into political aggression, as countries believed war might secure their economic future. 6. Decline of empires and political instability. Several old empires were weakening before the war. Ottoman Empire was collapsing, creating instability in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. Austro-Hungarian Empire struggled to control diverse ethnic groups. Political leaders feared losing power and authority. To maintain control, these empires often resorted to force, increasing tensions both internally and internationally. 7. Failure of diplomacy. Despite growing tensions, diplomacy failed. International crises before 1914, such as the Moroccan crises and Balkan Wars, were poorly managed. Leaders relied more on threats than negotiation. There was no strong international organization to prevent war. Many leaders believed war would be short and decisive, underestimating its true cost. Conclusion. World War I was not caused by a single event, but by a complex web of hidden causes. Nationalism fueled hatred, imperialism created rivalry, Militarism glorified war, alliances spread conflict, economic competition increased fear, empires weakened, and diplomacy failed. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand merely ignited tensions that had been building for decades. Understanding these hidden causes reminds us that wars are rarely sudden or accidental. They are often the result of long-term pressures ignored for too long. Part 2. The immediate causes and the outbreak of war. While the hidden causes created tension across Europe, the war did not begin until a series of immediate events pushed nations into open conflict. These events transformed long-standing rivalries into a full-scale global war. 8. The Balkan Powder Keg. The Balkans were known as the powder keg of Europe because of their constant instability. The region included many ethnic groups with strong nationalist ambitions. Serbia aimed to unite all Slavic peoples into one nation. Austria-Hungary feared that Serbian nationalism would break apart its empire. Russia supported Serbia to increase its influence in the Balkans. This region had already experienced violence during the Balkan Wars, 1912 to 1913, which further increased hostility and distrust. 9. Assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated in Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist. The assassin was linked to secret nationalist groups opposing Austro-Hungarian rule. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia for supporting terrorism. This event provided Austria-Hungary with the excuse it needed to take action against Serbia. Although the assassination was important, it was only the spark, not the true cause of the war. 10. The July Crisis, diplomatic failure. After the assassination, Europe entered a period known as the July Crisis. Key events. Austria-Hungary issued an ultimatum to Serbia with extremely harsh demands. Serbia accepted most demands but rejected a few that threatened its sovereignty. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1914. Instead of calming tensions, diplomacy failed completely. Leaders chose military action over negotiation. 11. Alliance system in action. Once Austria-Hungary declared war, the alliance system activated rapidly. Russia mobilized to protect Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia and then on France. Germany invaded Belgium to attack France. Britain entered the war to defend Belgium. What began as a conflict between two countries quickly became a world war, involving Europe, Asia, Africa, and later the United States. 12. War plans and miscalculations. European powers had prepared war plans long before 1914. Germany used the Schlieffen Plan, expecting a quick victory over France. France followed Plan 17, focusing on aggressive attacks. These rigid plans allowed little room for diplomacy once mobilization began. Leaders wrongly believed the war would be short and victorious, ignoring the reality of modern industrial warfare. Conclusion of Part 3. The outbreak of World War I was the result of poor leadership, rigid alliances, and dangerous assumptions. When crisis struck, nations reacted automatically, guided by fear and military plans rather than reason. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand did not cause the war on its own. It simply exposed how fragile peace in Europe had become. Part 3. Global expansion and the true nature of the war. Once World War I began, it quickly expanded beyond Europe. What many leaders expected to be a short conflict became a long, devastating global war, revealing how deeply the hidden causes had shaped the world. 13. Why the war became global. Although the war started in Europe, it soon spread across the world due to imperialism and alliances. European powers controlled colonies in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Colonies were forced to provide soldiers, laborers, and resources. Battles occurred in places such as Africa, the Pacific Islands, and the Middle East. The war truly became a world war, affecting millions of people who had no role in causing it. 14. Economic warfare and blockades. Economic strength became a major weapon. Britain used its navy to block German ports, cutting off food and supplies. Germany responded with submarine warfare, attacking ships near Britain. Civilians suffered shortages, hunger, and inflation. This showed how industrial economies were deeply tied to military power, a hidden factor that intensified the war's destruction. 15. Technology and the horror of modern war. World War I introduced new weapons that shocked the world. Machine guns caused massive casualties. Poison gas created fear and long-term suffering. Tanks and airplanes changed warfare forever. Trench warfare led to stalemate and misery. The belief that war would be glorious collapsed as soldiers faced unbearable conditions. 16. Propaganda and public control. Governments used propaganda to maintain support for the war. Media exaggerated victories and hid losses. Citizens were encouraged to hate enemy nations. Questioning the war was often seen as unpatriotic. This manipulation of public opinion was a hidden force that allowed the war to continue despite enormous losses. 17. Social changes and hidden costs. The war deeply affected society. Women entered factories and workplaces in large numbers. Traditional class systems weakened as soldiers from all backgrounds fought together. Psychological trauma, known as shell shock, affected thousands of soldiers. The war reshaped social structures in ways that lasted long after the fighting ended. Part 4. The end of the war and its long-term consequences. As World War I dragged on, the hidden causes that had sparked the conflict continued to shape its ending. When the fighting finally stopped in 1918, the world was permanently changed. The peace that followed failed to address many underlying problems, planting the seeds for future conflict. 18. Entry of the United States. The United States entered the war in 1917, turning the tide in favor of the Allies. Reasons for U.S. involvement: German submarine attacks on American ships. The Zimmermann Telegram, in which Germany encouraged Mexico to attack the U.S. economic and political ties with Britain and France. American involvement showed how global economic connections, one of the hidden causes, pulled even distant nations into the war. 19. Collapse of major empires. By the end of the war, several powerful empires had fallen. German Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Ottoman Empire, Russian Empire. These empires collapsed due to military defeat, economic exhaustion, and internal revolutions. Their fall reshaped Europe and the Middle East, but also created new political instability. 20. The Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles, 1919, officially ended the war between the Allies and Germany. Key terms: Germany was forced to accept full blame for the war. Heavy reparations were imposed. German territory and military strength were reduced. Instead of creating lasting peace, the treaty humiliated Germany and ignored the deeper causes of conflict, especially nationalism and economic rivalry. 21st. Failure of peace and rise of extremism. The post-war settlement failed to ensure stability. New nations were created, but ethnic tensions remained. Economic hardship led to political extremism. In Germany, resentment over the treaty fueled anger and nationalism. This failure showed that the hidden causes of World War I were not resolved, only postponed. 22nd League of Nations. A weak attempt at peace. The League of Nations was formed to prevent future wars. It lacked strong military power. Major countries, including the United States, did not fully support it. It failed to stop aggression in later years. Without real authority, the League could not address the problems that had caused the war. Conclusion of Part 4. The end of World War I did not bring true peace. Instead, unresolved nationalism, economic hardship, and political resentment continued to shape global affairs. The war's conclusion revealed that ignoring hidden causes leads to fragile peace and future disaster. Part 5. How the hidden causes led to World War II. Although World War I ended in 1918, the hidden causes that had started it were never truly resolved. Instead, they re-emerged in more dangerous forms, directly contributing to the outbreak of World War II only 20 years later. 23. Unresolved nationalism. Nationalism remained a powerful force after World War I. Many ethnic groups were placed in new countries without regard for culture or language. Germans living outside Germany felt unfairly separated from their homeland. Extreme nationalism developed, especially in Germany and Italy. This unresolved nationalism created anger, revenge, and a desire to regain lost pride. 24. Economic destruction and instability. The economic impact of World War I was devastating. Germany faced heavy reparations under the Treaty of Versailles. Inflation, unemployment, and poverty spread across Europe. The Great Depression, 1929, worsened existing economic problems. Economic hardship made people desperate, pushing them to support radical leaders who promised change. 25. Rise of dictatorships. The failure of peace and economic collapse led to the rise of authoritarian regimes. Adolf Hitler in Germany used nationalism and resentment to gain power. Benito Mussolini in Italy promoted militarism and imperial expansion. Democratic governments appeared weak and ineffective. These leaders exploited the same hidden causes, nationalism, militarism, and economic rivalry, that had led to World War I. 26th, failure of international cooperation. The international system created after World War I failed. The League of Nations lacked authority and unity. Countries pursued their own interests rather than collective peace. Aggressive actions by Germany, Italy, and Japan went unchecked. The world repeated the same mistakes made before 1914. Final conclusion. Lessons from the hidden causes. World War I was not an accident. It was the result of deep, hidden forces that built up over time. Nationalism, imperialism, militarism, economic rivalry, weak diplomacy, and unstable political systems. The failure to address these causes after the war ensured that history would repeat itself. The tragedy of World War I teaches an important lesson. Lasting peace requires more than ending battles. It requires understanding and resolving the root causes of conflict. Part 6. Legacy, Lessons, and Modern Relevance. Even more than a century later, World War I continues to shape global politics. The hidden causes that led to the war did not disappear in 1918. They became lessons for future generations and warnings for the modern world. 27. Redrawing of world maps and long-term conflicts. After World War I, borders were redrawn without fully considering ethnic, religious, or cultural realities. Artificial borders in the Middle East created long-term instability. New European states included mixed populations, leading to future ethnic conflicts. Many modern disputes trace their origins back to post-World War I settlements. This shows how ignoring hidden social and ethnic tensions can create lasting global problems. 28. Militarism and the arms race. A continuing threat. World War I demonstrated the dangers of unchecked militarism. Nations believed military strength guaranteed security. Arms races increased fear rather than safety. Similar patterns appear today in nuclear and technological arms competition. The war proved that excessive military buildup often makes conflict more likely, not less. 29. Nationalism, a double-edged sword. Nationalism can unite people, but extreme nationalism can be destructive. Before World War I, nationalism fueled hatred and rivalry. After the war, it led to revenge politics and fascism. Today, aggressive nationalism still threatens international cooperation. History shows that nationalism must be balanced with tolerance and diplomacy. 30. Importance of strong international institutions. The failure of the League of Nations highlighted the need for stronger global cooperation. After World War II, the United Nations was created with greater authority. International law and diplomacy became more important. Global problems now require collective solutions. This lesson came directly from the failure to address World War I's hidden causes effectively. 31. Lessons for the modern world. World War I teaches several key lessons. Wars are rarely caused by a single event. Ignoring long-term tensions leads to sudden catastrophe. Economic inequality, political instability, and nationalism remain dangerous forces. Peace requires justice, cooperation, and understanding, not punishment. These lessons remain relevant in today's interconnected world. Final reflection. The hidden causes of World War I remind us that history is shaped not only by dramatic events, but by slow-building pressures beneath the surface. When leaders fail to recognize and address these forces, the consequences can be devastating. Understanding World War I is not just about the past, it is about preventing similar tragedies in the future. Part 7. Historical Interpretations and Scholarly Debates. Historians have long debated the hidden causes of World War I. Rather than blaming a single nation or event, modern historians emphasize structural, political, and ideological factors that made war increasingly unavoidable. 32. The question of war guilt. For many years after the war, Germany was officially blamed as the main aggressor. However, historians now argue that no single country was solely responsible. All major powers contributed through militarism, alliances, and poor decision-making. War was the result of shared responsibility rather than deliberate planning by one nation. This interpretation challenges the harsh judgments imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. 33. The role of leadership failures. Many historians highlight failures of political leadership as a hidden cause. European leaders underestimated the consequences of war. Diplomatic solutions were available but ignored. Pride, fear, and miscommunication shaped critical decisions. The war exposed how incompetent leadership can turn crises into disasters. 34. Structural tensions in the international system. Some scholars argue that World War I was caused by weaknesses in the international system itself. No effective global organization existed to manage conflicts. Power politics dominated diplomacy. Military alliances reduced flexibility and increased fear. These systemic problems made peace fragile long before 1914. 35. Economic and industrial interpretations. Another historical view focuses on industrial capitalism. Industrial nations depended on constant economic growth. Competition for markets and resources increased hostility. War was seen as a solution to economic pressure. This interpretation links World War I to broader changes in global capitalism. 36. Was the war inevitable? Historians remain divided on this question. Arguments for inevitability. Long-term tensions made war highly likely. Arms races and alliances lock nations into conflict. Arguments against inevitability. Different choices by leaders could have prevented war. Diplomatic compromise was possible. This debate highlights the importance of human decision-making in history. Historical interpretations show that World War I was the result of complex and interconnected hidden causes. Understanding these debates helps us see the war not as a sudden tragedy, but